Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe below on YouTube. As always, Giants talk. Here to give you some news and a mock draft today, kind of discuss this Kadarius Toney situation. Apologies, I do have COVID, so I'm going to try my best to get through this as best I can without running out of energy. But, the grind never stops, as you guys know. So we're here to give you guys as much information as we can to give you guys a realistic mock draft to go with it. But before we dive into Kadarius Toney, some Darius Slayton rumors, how you doing today, my friend Anthony?
I'm doing great. I mean, the draft is just days away. I'm locked and loaded, ready to go. Super excited to see what the Giants finally do. Their plans will finally be revealed to us on Thursday night. Can't wait to see what they do with their 2 first-round picks. If they stick and pick, if they maybe trade down. I know there's a lot of rumors indicating that the Giants want to trade down, and there's also a lot of rumors indicating that they might be shopping Darius Slayton. They're shopping James Bradberry, and maybe even, I don't believe the rumor, but the rumor that they're shopping Kadarius Toney. So there's a whole lot going on right now in terms of the New York Giants and their rumors and news and all the reports surrounding them. So it's going to be a really exciting couple of days as we head into the draft. And of course, once the 2022 NFL draft begins, that's when all chaos breaks loose in this league. So I can't wait to watch everything unfold.
Absolutely. Now, regarding Kadarius Toney, the report that came out from Pat Leonard, of course, as we know, kind of indicated the Giants were shopping him. I don't think shopping was the right way to describe exactly what the Giants were doing. They probably were rather just listening to calls, listening to see what his value is. Maybe a team was willing to give him a first round pick and, the Giants could walk into the future with, Joe Shane's selection. Of course, that is not the case. Kadarius Toney, according to many different reports, would probably only be worth a mid-round selection, and cashing in a mid-round selection for the 20th overall pick last year is legitimate malpractice. One of the funnier things that happened today was his Kadarius Toney's private driver, and this guy also drives OBJ, Saquon Barkley, some big guys around the NFL, came out and was like, you want the real news from the source or the fake news from a Santa Claus news reporter who's bored with his life? KT ain't going nowhere. It's crazy because where a man is in his own lane, minding his business, staying out of the way, the media will make a fake story up just for clout. One more time, the Joker is not getting traded. And if you believe Pat Leonard's Eddie Spaghetti stories that made me laugh, then you must still believe in the Tooth Fairy. I'm gone, Cheech. And yes, I'm tagging every news reporter and news channel on board today like Pat Leonard. So clearly, it kind of is obvious that Kadarius Toney's not being traded. I mean, if you look at the picture the Giants posted today, the guy has Giants tattooed on his arm. Looks like a new tattoo. I imagine he probably doesn't want to be traded now after that. So, looking at the situation, seemed like BS from the beginning. Clearly kind of was meant to scare him straight, if anything. He's at voluntary practices now, and he's showing up and doing his part. So I think that that's a great sign for the Giants. A lot of people were willing to trade him for a third-round pick like 2 days ago or even a day ago. And I defended him pretty clearly on social media, and I think that I stand by that decision. And I think a lot of people are going to come to see that, he was just living his life. It's voluntary. If your employer asked you to come on a Saturday, what would you say? I'd be like, screw you, get out of my freaking face. I'm not coming on a Saturday. But at the end of the day, do make millions of dollars. So I understand that viewpoint and new management. Nonetheless, he's there. Clearly, the coaches have spoken to him, and he's showing us that he has the work ethic to want to, improve and be there. So Anthony, looking at the situation at hand, are you pretty happy with how it played out, or do you think there's still a little bit of animosity? Do you think maybe that trade rumor could still be brewing?
I mean, it could always be brewing. You really never know. Of course, we're heading into the 2022 NFL draft. There's going to be teams that are going to be making really crazy calls all around the league. Like sometimes we see some bizarre rumors and trade requests that never go through on draft night. So it wouldn't shock me if a team was calling and was like, "Hey, is James Bradberry available? We've heard that he is, but also we've heard a rumor about Kadarius Toney. Let's see what's up with him." They could get calls for him on draft night. That's very possible. But do I think he's going to get traded? No, I don't, because Joe Shane was pretty clear. He does not view Kadarius Toney as a tradable piece. He views him as a building block, a long-term piece that the Giants want to build around. The coaches have said that they've spoken to him, that they really like him, and that they're excited to get to work with him. And I think that Kadarius Toney, yeah, it's not ideal that he's showing up late to voluntary workouts, but once again, emphasis on the word voluntary, right? He's not required to be there. If he was required to be there and he wasn't there, then I would have a problem with it. Alex would have a problem with it, and everybody would have a problem with it. But they are voluntary. He's not required to be there. So I don't really see it as that big of an issue. Ideally, he'd be there. He'd be meeting his new coaches. He'd be meeting his new teammates, all that stuff. That's the ideal scenario, but that's not the scenario that played out. And also, I don't really think it makes that big of an impact if he missed a week of voluntary minicamp practices in April when the season is all the way in September. Like, let's be real, guys. It's not that big of a deal. It's really just because it's the offseason. People need something to talk about. Pat Leonard saw an opportunity to make a report and make a claim and just take it way too far out of proportion. That's how I feel about this. That's what I think Pat Leonard did. I think he blew this out of proportion. I don't think the Giants were ever shopping Kadarius Toney. I think a couple teams probably called because they heard that he wasn't showing up to voluntary workouts, and they said, are you considering trading him? And the Giants said, we'll listen to calls on everybody, but no, we're not trying to trade him. That's what I think happened. I really like Kadarius Toney, man. I think that he is going to be a beast for the Giants this year, especially in Brian Daboll's offensive scheme. I think he has that Deebo Samuel potential. So I'm excited to see what the Giants are able to do with him in the regular season because I'm very confident he will be a starting wide receiver on the New York Giants roster this year.
Yeah, I mean, the guy has elite level potential. Like he has the ability to move that like no not many humans on the planet are able to move and stop on a dime like Kadarius Toney. With that being said, we're talking about he had a 189-yard performance against Dallas with Jason Garrett calling plays and Mike Glennon at quarterback. There is no chance you're going to tell me that he is not capable of so much more in Brian Dable and Mike Kafka's scheme. Like it's just borderline insane to me that people don't understand. Some people don't understand how great he could be. You don't give up on that type of talent after a player just not showing up to voluntary practices. Like that's not the threshold of giving up on a player. Giving up on a player is like, he punched his own teammate in the locker room, or he shoved a coach, or he didn't show up to mandatory practice for no reason, or he got arrested for whatever reason. KT did none of that. In fact, he punched a Dallas player. That's like the best type of person you want to punch. Like that's the only person I'm like, okay, that's fine. But like he didn't do anything that crazy to deserve not being given some more time to build relationships with the coaches. And now another player that's being shopped right now is Darius Slayton, apparently, according to Dan Duggan, who's a much more reliable source, in my opinion. Darius Slayton, the only thing I really could see them getting back is a late, maybe sixth round pick. He was a fifth round pick back in 2019. He's going into his final year of his rookie contract. So like really, how much is he worth at this point? You're really renting a player that had an 18% drop rate last year for one season. He may not even be worth a sixth round pick. He might be a seventh round return, honestly. And the Giants, would be losing a depth piece there at wide receiver. So who really knows what they'd be getting back? The more realistic part of this, in my opinion, would be he would more likely be packaged with a James Bradberry in a potential trade. So let's say the Chiefs wanted to go out and get James Bradberry, and they wanted another speedy receiver who could fill a back end role that's making pretty much no money. Maybe just a toss in to sweeten the deal. Throw in Darius Slayton to get over the hump there, and they get a decent receiver who has some depth services, and they get their cornerback. So maybe that's something they could do. I think he's more of a sweetener in a deal rather than a straight up trade for draft capital. So Anthony, how realistic do you think it is the Giants do move on from Darius Slayton, and what do you think his value is?
I think it's semi-realistic, to be completely honest, and I think that kind of scenario that you just laid out there with the package deal, right? The James Bradberry plus Darius Slayton trade, I could see that being the case because, the Giants might enter draft night and they might get some calls on James Bradberry, and someone might be like, hey, we'll give you a fourth or a fifth round pick for James Bradberry. And the Giants are like, okay, but what about James Bradberry plus Darius Slayton? Maybe it turns it into a third or second round pick even. That's possible because you're getting two players to double the value. So they might be able to get double the draft value, draft capital. So I really like that idea, trying to package those two players together to get an even better or higher round draft pick. But Darius Slayton is a player who I think has been very productive considering where he was drafted in 2019. A fifth round pick out of Auburn. He really slept on, went under the radar. The Giants found him, and he's been a solid starter. Now, he hasn't been perfect. He hasn't been amazing, but he's been a solid secondary receiver on an NFL team as a starter, which is way more than you ever really expect or ask for out of a fifth round pick. So Darius Slayton's had a very successful career. He's also played with some really bad quarterback play. He's played with some really bad offensive schemes. So really, all things considered, as a fifth round pick in 2019, he has had a solid career, and he is a very good player, one that exceeded all expectations set out for him when he entered the league. Now, I think that the Giants could probably get a mid to late round pick for him. I think it would be higher if he wasn't entering the final year of his contract. So I think you got to keep that in mind. Whoever trades for Darius Slayton is only getting him for 1 year. So that's probably going to bring down his trade value quite significantly. But I think there's a lot of teams out there right now that are looking for number 2 receivers or number 3 receivers if they're really talented teams, right? They will find a lot of value in Darius Slayton. I think that the Giants are probably not going to end up trading him during the draft, but I could totally see Darius Slayton getting traded down the road as well, maybe during preseason, right before the season starts. If a team that is really competitive, one of the teams at the top, like you just mentioned, the Chiefs, they get another wide receiver injury. They're like, all right, screw it. We got to go after a wide receiver now. I could see them maybe making a move for Darius Slayton, but again, it's going to depend on how the draft falls. There's going to be teams that are looking for wide receivers early in the draft. Maybe somebody jumps in front of a team and they don't get the receiver that they wanted. Okay, then they're going to pivot, hit the trade block, and that's where Darius Slayton could come into play. I think there's a very realistic chance of him being traded before the season starts, but he is a really good player. He can be a solid wide receiver 2 or 3 on pretty much any team in this NFL. So I really like Darius Slayton, and I'm excited to see what the Giants get for him if they do end up trading him.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Now let's dive into this mock draft, Anthony. So we're going to do the first 2 rounds here, and I really want to, take a look at the Giants' needs. Right? They need a tackle, they need a pass rusher, and they need a cornerback. Assuming that James Bradbury gets traded and they save the 11.7 million, which I think will happen. But with the 5th overall pick in this scenario, the Giants go after Evan Neal. Evan Neal is, in my opinion, the most well-rounded tackle in this draft class, right? Has a pretty solid sample size of both run and pass blocking snaps last season, almost, I think, 800, 900 snaps in total. Some other guys like Charles Cross had a lot more pass blocking snaps, but Alabama has a pretty nicely balanced run and passing attack. So Evan Neal has a lot of experience at left tackle, but he also has experience at right tackle from last season. So I think, when you're looking at him as a pure prospect, he's the most well-rounded player of the bunch out of those 3 top offensive tackles. So I think, when we're looking at him, it's fair to say that the Giants would probably be best going for Evan Neal just because I think he would offer them immediate day one caliber talent. And I think that he would probably give Daniel Jones the most protection immediately because he has the right tackle experience. I think that Charles Cross could have the most upside, but if the Giants want Daniel Jones to succeed now, it's going to take Cross some time to adapt to right tackle and really become that stud pass blocking, like run defending guy that we need him to be. So I think Evan Neal is probably the best guy to go at number 5, just based on overall, like his floor is a lot higher, I think, than Charles Cross, but I think Charles Cross's ceiling is the highest out of Ikem Okonu and Evan Neal. So like, where do you really go here, Anthony? Do you go with a more conservative approach and you go with like, okay, I know this guy's going to be this good, but he's not going to be like insanely great. I mean, he could be, but I think that his floor is like pretty damn good. Or you go with a guy that has the potential to be like all pro, but his floor could be a little bit less, especially with the run blocking side. I think Ikem Okonu will be off the board by 5 personally. So when you're thinking about Evan Neal at number 5, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that Evan Neal is the safe pick here. If the Giants were going for a left tackle, let's say Andrew Thomas was not on the Giants, right? They needed a left tackle. I'm saying Charles Cross. You're going for the highest ceiling, the highest potential left tackle here. But there's a really key difference in the fact that all 3 of these guys that we mentioned, Charles Cross, Ikem Okonu, and Evan Neal, are left tackles traditionally. And the Giants have a left tackle. So what they're going to have to do is transition this guy to the right side of the line. Now, that does sometimes create problems, right? That can create a bit of a slow development plan for some of these young players entering the NFL. So when you're taking a look at Charles Cross, especially, we were mentioning how he's got a lot of refinement to do. He's got the best traits. He's the best pass blocker, but he's a lot of refinement to do in both pass protection and especially the running game. He really needs to improve there. How do we expect him to improve when he's also learning to basically play a new position or basically flip his fundamentals backwards and get ambidextrous and play on the other side of the line, right? That could cause a lot of struggles for Charles Cross. And I think that ideally for Charles Cross and his career, he gets drafted by a team that needs a left tackle and a pass-heavy offense. The Giants do not need a left tackle. They need a right tackle. And typically speaking, traditional NFL offenses, The left tackle is a better pass protector, and the right tackle is a better run blocker. So that's where I pivot to Evan Neal. I think Evan Neal is the proper fit for the New York Giants because he has the ability to play right tackle. He's done it before. He's also got the ability to play guard because he's done that before. So that even gives him a higher floor out of all of these prospects. I think when you're talking about ceiling floor, Charles Cross, I agree with you, has the highest ceiling. I think that maybe Ike McClone, that's pretty close too. But when you look at Evan Neal, his floor is definitely the highest out of all of these tackle prospects because he's played a left tackle as a starter, he's played a right tackle as a starter, and he started games at guard. So he knows how to play basically anywhere on the offensive line, and he was a good player at all three of those positions. It's not like he played on the left side and was good and on the right side and was bad, played inside was bad, played outside was good. No, he was good at every single position. He is just a good offensive lineman. And the Giants right now, they just need the best talent possible, the least bust potential players, the highest floors. So that's why, in my opinion, Evan Neal is the best fit for the New York Giants. If they were in a different situation, like I said, they needed a left tackle. They had the ability right now, like they were in an opportunity where they could just go for the best potential player. Charles Cross, I think, has the highest potential, but the Giants, in my opinion, need to go after the highest floor. And for right now, that is Evan Neal.
Yeah, I think Evan Neal probably would make the most sense for at 5 if they had their choice. But number 7, that's where a little things get a little bit more interesting. You got to get yourself a nice pass rusher or a defensive back in this scenario. Now, you could make the argument that Derek Stingley is the best option or Sauce Gardner, but in this scenario, I believe that the Giants are going to go with Sauce Gardner if he's on the board. Why? Well, because he's healthy. Joe Shane, Brian Dable, they've mentioned in the past how important reliability is. Derek Stingley has been injured pretty frequently over the past 2 years. The Liz Frank injury that he just is coming off of, he looked great at his pro day, but like how sure are we that he's going to remain healthy? We know Sauce Gardner's healthy. And I think that is the deciding factor for the Giants. Sauce Gardner, 6'3", 193 pounds. He's really long. He's lanky. He has that cornerback length you want to get his hands in there and break up the passes. So last year he had 968 snaps, 482 coverage snaps. Dude allowed 131 yards in total, only 0 touchdowns, no touchdowns allowed, and 3 interceptions and a 50% completion rate. So every single year he's been in college, he's allowed less and less and less yards. So 360 yards as a freshman, 221 in 2020, and then 131 last year. The guy has gotten progressively better as time has gone on, and he is obviously like one of the top defensive backs, if not the best, in this draft class. Against Alabama in the playoffs, he allowed 14 yards on 4 targets. The people just don't throw his way. And the idea here is if Bradbury is going to be, traded or released or whatever happens there, this is a guy that you can build as your CB2. Aaron Robinson's another guy I really like who's currently on the Giants roster. But, let him compete. Let him, compete with a rookie corner like a Sauce Gardner. I think in Wink Martindale's system, cornerbacks are far more important than edge rushers, which is why I'm starting to come to the sense that I think going with a defensive back is probably for the best instead of a pass rusher early in the first round with one of those 2 picks. You can always create more pressure, right? Wink Martindale is known for sending blitzers, sending safeties, sending linebackers. So when you're doing that, you need your corners to be able to hold up in coverage, especially in the first 2 to 5 seconds. With that being the case, you need to have lockdown corners, and Sauce Gardner is going to be a stud if developed correctly. And he also is very good in man coverage, press coverage right now, which makes him perfect for, being in Wink Martindale's system. Like PFF says, he's built and allowed to press with a ton of experience. He has 851 press coverage snaps in his career, which should be a telling factor in Sauce Gardner being perfect fit for the Giants at number 7, Anthony. So what are you thinking about him? And do you think this is the right pick instead of maybe going with if a Kayvon Thibodeau is on the board or a Jermaine Johnson?
Yeah, we've had this debate before. If Kayvon Thibodeau is on the board, personally, I'm taking Thibodeau. He's higher on my draft board. And also when we're taking a positional value and contractual value, financial value at those positions, edge rusher versus cornerback, I'm going with the edge rusher every single time. However, there's a lot of rumors now swirling that Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be a lock at number 4 to the Jets, right? And there's a really good chance that he gets drafted inside the top 5 picks. And there's also a lot of rumors going around that the Giants just aren't going to draft him regardless. So if we're talking about the Giants going ahead with Sauce Gardner at number 7, I'm still going to be extremely happy about that draft pick. I think Sauce Gardner is a phenomenal draft prospect. I love what he brings to the table. He's uber aggressive in coverage. He loves to play press. He knows how to play it, has plenty of experience in doing so, as Alex just mentioned. And I really like his demeanor, his mentality. He's got that swagger to him, that confidence that every successful cornerback in the NFL needs to have. So I really like Ahmad Sauce Gardner. Out of Cincinnati, you mentioned all the big schools that he's played against, all the great receivers that he's basically just shut down, never allowed a touchdown in his collegiate career, which is just an insane statistic. I really like Sauce Gardner. And I think when we're talking about the scheme fit with the New York Giants, the Giants are going to be running a lot of press man. And when they're not playing press man, it's going to be cover 3, press zone. And those are basically the two coverages that Sauce Gardner played in his entire collegiate career. It's like a seamless transition for him. And I kind of agree with a point that you made in terms of in the Giants defensive scheme with Wink Martindale, which position is more important, edge rusher or corner? I mean, like I mentioned, contractually speaking, like financially speaking, I think you go with the edge rusher, but in this defensive scheme, it is true. I think the cornerback is more important because the Ravens used to use kind of like nobody sometimes on the edge rusher position, get a lot of productivity out of them because of the way that the scheme plays. So they had success in the pass rushing department because they had a lot of coverage sacks. They had a lot of really great cornerbacks, a lot of great safeties to do the job and make things easier on the edge rushers. So I think when you're talking about what does Wink Martindale want, he probably really wants a premier cornerback. And when you take a look at what the Giants are about to do in this 2022 NFL draft, I think they're going to walk out of here trading James Bradberry away at some point in the 3 days of the draft. So they're going to need to fulfill that cornerback 1 position. And Sauce Gardner, I think that is a perfect draft pick. He can be a long-term building block, a long-term starter, CB1 for the Giants defense. And like we mentioned, perfect scheme fit for Wink Martindale. If they're trying to get these guys to fit into a scheme so that they can build the scheme for years to come, Sauce Gardner, perfect fit. Perfect value. I mean, cornerbacks are a very valuable position anyway, and I do think he's worthy of being the 7th overall pick in the draft. So if the Giants go ahead and draft him on Thursday, I'm going to be super excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting draft. I'm really excited to see what the Giants do. They could go in so many different directions, which is really, really fun, honestly. I like it being more of a surprise and kind of having an idea what they're going to do and having all these rumors. I'd wish some of the beat reporters would focus more on the draft and kind of stuff that we're hearing out of that instead of just these stories that make everyone go crazy about players that we really want to succeed. But the last player in this mock draft, 36th overall, is none other than Oklahoma standout pass rusher Nick Bonito. Now, there are many players who could be suitable for 36, right? Jalen Petre out of Baylor, safety, Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. There's so many different players that could fit the mold here. But because the Giants don't go with a pass rusher, even Boya Mafe out of Penn State, another guy who would fit the bill nicely. So there's a lot of different players the Giants could go here, but at the end of the day, I have them going with Bonito because of his speed. Right, I really like Nick Bonito's speed. When you're looking at him as a pure prospect, by the way, Boy Maffei goes to Minnesota, not Penn State. That's my mistake. But Bonito had 7 sacks last year, 15 tackles for a loss, and 39 overall tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. When you're looking at him as a pure prospect, the speed stands out. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. And when you have a scheme like Wink Martindale's that relies on cornerbacks, you cannot give opposing quarterbacks time in the pocket. If you give them more than a couple seconds, the coverage eventually is gonna fall apart. One safety back there, man coverage, and with cornerbacks, it's a recipe for disaster if you're unable to generate pressure within a couple of seconds. So with speed comes great responsibility. And with Nick Bonito comes great speed. And I think when you're looking at how the blitz packages are going to look, they're going to be sending linebackers, sending safeties. There's going to be a lot of 1v1s. There's going to be a lot of stunts, a lot of open lanes, a lot of, like I said, those 1v1 battles. And when you have a speedster like that, like Bonito, he's going to be able to win a lot of those battles. He's going to have those open lanes to shoot through. You need those guys to be able to get to the quarterback and make them rush their decisions. Quarterbacks that are, prone to making mistakes, maybe inaccurate, guys that, are fast, that can run. You need to have quick edge rushers like Bonito in this day and age. The question is, can Bonito stand his ground in the run game? that's where we're going to have some problems potentially. Maybe not. He's a little bit undersized. He's like 6'3", 240 pounds. So he's not like the lightest guy. He's got some size to him, but can he seal the edge? Can he grow enough to be big enough and strong enough to seal the edge? That is a legitimate concern with Bonito, Anthony. So when you're looking at him as a pure pass rusher, looks like he could be a perfect fit for us. But because Wink Martindale's system relies so heavily on those edge rushers to also play run defense, that's where things might get a little bit sketchy. What do you think about Nick Bonito, though?
I like Nick Bonito a lot as a prospect. I just think that he's a rotational pass rusher. I think he's a DPR, designated pass rusher, who comes in basically on third downs or second and long. And I don't think that he's a three-down player by any means because he can't make an impact in the running game. Third and short, he's not on the field. They can't put him out there because he's going to get beat up in the running game as a rookie. So I really like Nick Bonito. I don't think that he's necessarily my top option at number 36 overall, though. You mentioned some other prospects that I really like Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, a phenomenal safety prospect that I really like. And I think that he can do a whole lot in the Giants defense, especially working alongside Xavier McKinney. Of course, they've also got Leo Chenal as another prospect that we mentioned, linebacker prospect that I really like. Tyler Linderbaum could end up falling to the second round. There is a lot of options for the Giants in the second round. And I think that I'm almost more excited for the second round of the draft than I am for the first round of the draft because there's just so many defensive prospects, especially that the Giants can find incredible value at the number 36 overall pick. But talking about Nick Bonito and his potential fit in the Giants scheme with Wink Martindale, again, this is a run defense scheme first. They really rely on those outside linebackers to be run defenders, and Nick Bonito might not be the best fit in that regard, but he is a phenomenal pass rusher, a speed rusher. He just requires a lot of development to become that real good player that the Giants need there because they do need an impact three-down player in the second round of the draft, in my opinion. And I think there's other players, other prospects that are more fit to be impact three-down players on their defense. So I really like Nick Bonito, but I'm not sure if his fit and his potential meets the value that the Giants need to hit on with that pick in the second round. So in this mock draft, though, they got the right tackle in the first round. They got a cornerback as well. Might as well add another defender, but I do think that they could realistically come away from the first two rounds of the draft with three starters. And I don't think that Nick Bonito is a starting level player in his rookie season. So for me personally, he wouldn't be my favorite pick at number 36 overall. I think he's more about, a mid second round prospect. Giants are picking very early in this year's draft in the second round. And I don't think that the value meets that draft spot with Nick Bonito because he's not a three-down starter with the number 36 overall pick. So I think, round one, they're going to get a starting right tackle. They can get a starting cornerback that we just mentioned. They could even maybe get the starting edge rusher there, and then maybe they go with a cornerback in the second round. But in round two, I think it's also important that the Giants not walk away with, two starters in the first round and then a developmental piece in the second round like Nick Bonito. I think that they can come away with three starters with their first three picks, and that should be the ultimate goal. So Nick Bonito, really like him, but he's a DPR designated pass rusher, and I think that the Giants can find someone with a much better value in the second round.
Yep, and that's totally reasonable. There's a lot of different players, like I mentioned before, that could fit the bill here. Boyan Mafe is not, like I said before, he could definitely be someone they look there. Jalen Petrie from Baylor, safety. Sign. There's so many guys the Giants could look at 36. This is a crazy deep draft, and that makes it even more exciting because we have 3 picks in the first 36 selections. So tons of rumors coming out this week. It's all mostly lies. So don't fall into the bait of all that crap. I keep seeing that Trayvon Walker going number 1 overall, and now he's the betting odds have him in favor over Aiden Hutchinson, but I still think that Hutchinson's going to go number 1 overall. But ultimately, though, after Hutchinson, who I think will be number 1, it's all kind of like, who knows? What is Houston going to do? What is Detroit going to do? So there's some people saying that a quarterback could go, the first quarterback might go after the 19th pick. You know what I mean? Like, it's just I'm so unsure. But I do know that there's a lot of great talent this year, and the Giants have an opportunity to land 2 day 1 starters in the first round and a day 1 starter in the second round too, which is pretty freaking awesome. But guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, taking a look at totally different kind of topics, ranging from KT to Darius Slayton to a mock draft. I'd love to hear your opinions below on YouTube. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.